Excuse me, guys.
Sorry. On the basis of those who believe it. So, for example, if you say that okay, something is controversial and therefore it's less likely to be true, then you're attaching the truth value of that thing with what people's perception of it is.
Sure, it's a very good general rule, but like I said, see, this fallacy isn't always so enlightening, because do you believe in Henry VIII?
Yeah, I believe he existed.
Okay, because it's not a very controversial thing. We both agree in Henry VIII. Now,
okay,
we're both subject to the fallacy on things like, it's a good example, giant squid. Giant squid, some scientists believe don't exist, because there's only been like 5 ever found. Now, if I asked you, do you believe that giant squid exists at the bottom of the ocean floor, what would you say?
Depends on how you define giant, man. I've seen squids. I don't know, you know.
By the biological definition, which is a giant.
So am I a giant?
Anyway, look.
I don't know.
I knew there would be some.
Do you know, I'll tell you something, Darren. Let me tell you something funny, just to kind of break the ice a bit. You know, I didn't see my dad for a long time, yeah? He went abroad and whatnot, and he came back. And he looked at me, because I'm taller than him, and he looked at me and he goes, "Are you a giant?" And I didn't know how to answer that question, right? The question is, a lot of these things depend upon definitions. Do you see what I'm saying? So you said giant squid. What's your definition of giant? We know what a squid is. That's a different story, right? What I'm saying here generally is, what I want you to understand is that in theological discussions, we shouldn't retreat into an approach, or we shouldn't retreat into a place where we use different standards as we do in other places. So for example, in philosophy, or in general, in history or whatever, you have a certain standard of truth. You're willing to accept that Henry VIII existed. You're willing to accept that the Holocaust happened because of testimonial evidence. Yeah. If that's your approach, fine, that's fine. Now let's talk about that approach. I haven't got a problem with that. I think that's a good approach, yeah? Because generally speaking, I haven't been to 200 countries in the world, but I know that they exist, right? Sure. I have confidence that they exist.
Can I just say something there? See, this is where the error occurs, I think.
Go on.
You go from this very specific example, like you said, there's many specific examples, and then you said generally speaking. We don't want to generally speak about these things. This is the point.
About what things?
About the standards and different definitions that we shouldn't speak generally about.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay, so tell me what. Fine. If you're saying that, I'm saying there are general principles we can employ in life. Yeah. So I'm saying that this is a principle I'm putting in place. If you're saying, for the most part, I accept testimonial account so long as it fulfills X, Y, Z criteria.
No, because I never look. I'm really making the case for specificity here. Now,
okay, fine. But can you be specific? So we've got a general rule.
I'll give you a general example.
Yeah.
If you said "Does speakers corner exist?" I would have maybe referred to 2 requirements to say it exists. Now with other things, there are further requirements, and what was the word you used that you have to meet? Standards.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Not everything has the same requirement of skepticism. If that makes sense.
So tell me what.
Like I said, some things are controversial, some things aren't.
So okay, once again, as I said.
Sorry, are we on the same page?
We are on the same page, right? If what you're saying is that, for example, it's controversial for a reason which relates to its, for example, the primary source materials in the case of history, yeah? So something like the existence of, I don't know, Cyprus the Great or something, yeah? Or whatever you want, something obscure, something which happened in the Bronze Age or something like that, where the primary source materials are not conclusive. And you said, okay, that's controversial for an academic reason. That's different to saying it's controversial for what I refer to as a democratic reason, which is kind of like, okay, people differ on this. People differ on almost everything, right?
Thing.
No, I don't think it is the same thing.
Why isn't it? Why is it different for academics, for example?
Okay, so academic reasons usually cite evidences, whereas the lay people are not specialist enough to cite those evidences all the time. And it goes back to Socrates' definition of, criticism of democracy. He says that democracy is, his criticism of it was that democracy is not the be-all and end-all because not everyone is a specialist to talk about politics. Now the same thing applies for history and science. So if, for example, me and you differ on a scientific reality, it's different to if scientists of the highest eminence differ for methodological reasons. Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I feel like we're going, the point was about, you said academic principles will be different from normal people.
Now, what I'm saying is...
What did you mean?
Okay, let me tell you one more time. You said if something is... Your objection to testimonial account seems to be that if something is controversial, then the question mark ought to be put on it, yeah? I'm saying to you, that is a justifiable stance to have in some cases. In other cases, it's not justifiable. So if it's controversial academically, because the evidence base, whether it be primary or secondary source evidences, is questionable, that's justifiable controversy, which gives you the right to put a question mark on it. But if it's controversial for popular reasons, which the lay audience might not be acquainted with, the academic realities of that particular thing, then it doesn't carry the same epistemic weight.
They are intertwined.
And they can be intertwined.
I think they often are.
They often are intertwined, but I'm not saying they always are, which is the point I'm making,
Sure,
right?
okay.
Okay, fine. So, generally now, why is this relevant to the atheist/theist debate? Because now we're living in the West, and for the most part, there is a popular culture of atheism. Now, if you look at the census in 2001, there was some 76% Christians in this country, right? In 2011, it went down to some 54 or something like this. Yeah, so it went down by 20. So 20% of people left Christianity.
Crazy.
Yeah, in 10 years. So if we were to consult the general mass, the popular opinion, okay, that's going to give us a taste of what people think of atheism. Now, because we're social creatures and we're prone to secondary socialization in the context of whatever country we're living in, we're going to absorb some of that energy, right, or some of that popular opinion. So what I'm saying is that when you're approaching subjects, sometimes you have to strip yourself of your sociological bias and start looking at things once again on their academic merit, which is why we had to make the distinction between what I refer to as a popular controversy versus an academic or otherwise evidence-based controversy. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Okay, but the thing is, when I said they intertwine, they tend to intertwine most in the scientific, theological places. You know, because there's an academic lack of academic consensus in science, in evolution, for example, and in theology, it influences the popular...
I agree, sometimes that can be the case, yeah.
Isn't it always the case in science and religion?
No, science and religion, it's not always, you can't say always. It's once again, to take your words, you can't take a principle and generalize it, right?
A lot of the time.
A lot of the time, I agree with that. Yeah, a lot
the
of the time.
reason that most evolutionary psychologists disagree with many evolutionary biologists is because of the lack of academic consensus. And that trickles down into conversations on Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And
I agree.
It's the same in religion.
Yeah, certainly. It can be the same in religion. So I'm saying, once again, I don't think there's a point of disagreement.
Anyway,
the point is this, right? So long as you're talking about testimony, so that's one way of you ascertaining the truth, right? You're ascertaining something using testimonial account that meets a certain methodological criteria. That's what you call history. The study of history is based on that, actually. Primary sources, yeah, you look at things on their merit and see how many people have affirmed these things.
To clarify one more thing.
Yeah.
You know how...
basically, in a nutshell, bro, sorry, because you made the point about present versus history, yeah? History is the study of the past. Now, the conversation I had with you like 2 minutes ago, that's the past, right? Everything is history in a sense. If you want to talk, everything is history in a sense, right? However, I know generally historians in the academic world, they won't say something is history unless it's at least a decade or 2 decades.
Yeah, well,
right, well that's something else, right? But what I'm saying to you is, the methodological approach can sometimes be used, if not exactly the same, but in a similar way, in different conversations, like philosophical conversations and elsewhere. Like for example, you know you're your mother's son, because your mother, the woman who brought you up, gave you a testimonial account. She told you, your name is Darren, okay, I'm your mum, you grew up in this house, but you didn't demand to see, like I'm saying, your birth certificate and to do a DNA test and to go through the actual method. You get me? So from that, do you have any doubt that your mum is your mum?
No, but like I said,
so testimony in that case is fine.
It's fine.
Right.
But
okay.
You made a point about history. The thing is with history, the reason you can't compare history to the study of a tree or something is because...
Is it the study of?
the study of a tree, I don't know, or a giant squid again, yeah? It's because
There is a different methodological approach. It's not really, man.
Well, let me tell you why. Because history isn't the past.
What is it?
History is the study of the past.
Okay.
You know, make that clear.
Yeah, okay.
And history isn't one method. I mean, you should know if you've done this, that there's many different types of historical methods, you could say. Historical materialist ways of looking at history, historicism, historiography. These are very different ways of trying to ascertain the actual events of the past. And that's why history is far more contentious than almost any other topic that I can think of outside of religion or science. You know, sociology is very,
once again, who cares?
very clear cut, because you can look at the study of society.
The way you put it there, I don't really agree with the way you
don't agree with that.
All right. Well, like I've said to you before, something being contentious or controversial doesn't depreciate from its absolute truth standard. In a nutshell. But that's one. Number two, the study of history, the study of history, just like the study of science, sociology, and psychology, and all these things, is premised on kind of empiricism and a kind of induction.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were kind of making a big separation between history and science, but in essence, both of those studies depend upon empirical and inductive methods.
No, and I can tell you why they don't.
Really? Okay, yeah, go ahead and tell me how they don't. That would be really interesting.
Come on. History doesn't rely on empirical evidence.
Okay, so how do you collect evidence? What evidence is?
Empirical evidence is measurable, presentable evidence.
Yeah, okay, so you see the evidence, you hear the evidence.
Tree, for example,
yeah.
I look at the tree, I study it.
You look at the primary source evidences.
Yeah, and then I can say
no. But in history, you're looking.
It's not empirical, though.
It is empirical. Of course, it's empirical. Or what is empiricism?
We have a different definition of empiricism then, because
no. There is one definition of empiricism.
Okay, so give me an example of a historical piece of empirical evidence.
And any evidence is empirical. Any evidence is empirical. Because the way you're consuming
empirical evidence proving Henry VIII.
You could argue, yeah.
What is it then?
So the primary source things like his diaries and this and that.
It's not empirical, man.
Of course, it's empirical, man.
No, it's not.
Okay.
You said testimony.
We'll let you can go home.
I'm going by your own definition.
Hold on. Listen, it is empirical. Testimony is empirical.
Testimony is not empirical.
Let me tell you why it is. Let me tell you what empiricism is, yeah? Okay, you might not know, but this is okay.
I never get out my phone, bro, but you might have to get on your phone and check.
No, trust me, I don't need to. Okay, empiricism, for me, hold on, let me tell you.
For you. All right.
Okay, that's what I said. Empiricism is something which relies upon your five senses in order to ascertain information, okay? Everything in essence that you consume is a result of one of your five senses or a combination of them. So when you're coming to a conclusion of something, right, almost anything that you come to a conclusion about is going to be as a result of seeing something, hearing something,
yes.
touching something, feeling something, or whatever.
Very broad and vaguely.
Okay, so
yes.
In history, you can't have evidences unless you interact with them in one of those five ways. Therefore, history is as empirical as science. Okay, if you don't, fine. No, look, if you don't accept that,
you should see the difference.
Okay, now I've just told you how I've defined it. And now, if you don't accept this, it's fine. You can go home. We can both do our studies or whatever. That's fine. No problem. Yeah, I'll see your point of view.
We'll differ on that.
No problem. No problem. If someone sees, right now, I see something, all right, happening, and then 20 or 30 years from now, someone asks me what happened, I have felt that situation happen firsthand, and I'm then going to narrate it and it will become testimony. But it starts off as being empirical.
Okay, well...
That's another way it's empirical.
Okay, sure. Let's say we're in court. This guy says he saw me do something, commit a crime. I say, no, I didn't do it. I didn't commit nothing. So in both cases, neither testimony is valid because testimony is not empirical. In the court of law.
Fine. If you want to say that, that's fine. I've just explained to you how it is. I've just explained to you how it is.
Once again, we differ.
No problem. We can look up the definition of what is empiricism.
So look, take history. Yeah?
What is empiricism? Do you want to get your phone out because you were talking about it? Read out what empiricism is. Do you want someone to?
Yeah, if someone else could do it.
If someone else can do it. Get the definition of empiricism so we can understand what I mean by it. I'm saying, generally speaking, all of those sciences. By the way, Yeah, generally speaking, we're speaking in generals because everything is in general. It's all.
Sometimes we can
you can find exceptions
if
to
we
almost
agree,
every rule.
We can specify.
What I'm saying
We
is
could
this.
talk about Henry VIII. That's a very specific example.
Moreover, social sciences, by their very nature, attempt to mimic the natural sciences. You know that.
Sometimes very badly.
That's good, fine, okay. But
Sociology is not an empirical form. That's why sociology.
It is empirical.
Then okay.
But it doesn't follow exactly this.
I feel like you definitely have your own definition of this.
All right, let's see. What is empiricism? With the E, with the E.
Well, why are these looking for it?
Yeah,
no, it's
there's many meanings. Yeah.
No, sorry, that's wrong one.
Okay, so.
Bro, can someone get me a definition of empiricism on their phone so we can...
What do you need?
EM.
Let's get it.
I, and it should come up. There it is, empiricism. There we are. Do you want me to read it? Let me read it.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Empiricism is a theory that states that knowledge comes from only or primarily from sensory experience is one of the several views of epistemology, etc., etc., etc.
Okay, so what did I... Hold on. You've just read that.
Yes.
So Darren, please, yeah? You've just read out, because I don't mind being wrong here. I don't mind.
I feel like you were. And
No, hold on. I don't mind being wrong. However, I said to you here...
I said it again?
Darren, listen to me. No, hold on. Darren, listen carefully. We don't need to prove anything like intelligence. I don't care if you're more intelligent.
No, I'm not trying to do that.
Okay, do you get me?
We're trying to.
So it's on camera. Do you know what I'm saying? I said, what is empiricism? Something which relies on the five senses. Do you get me? So here you've read the definition,
We don't disagree on that.
So, okay, fine.
I'm trying to say that historical source isn't empirical because you don't.
What you're saying is kind of like anyone would not agree with it. Anyone who understands
I think
these.
we have to disagree then, man. Look,
You don't have to be arrogant on this. Stubborn.
Come on, man. Like,
This is not something which you need to disagree on.
I can't. Come on, man.
Empiricism is a theory.
Come on, man.
That
Like,
states.
You don't need to.
arrogant, man.
It's a theory.
Okay, stubborn. You don't need to be stubborn on this. You don't need to. You just read the. I've said five senses. You said with sensory experience. Same thing. What's the difference?
But it does state it's a theory.
Shall we pursue this? I'm happy to pursue this.
I've just told you that. I've just read out almost the same thing as that. Yeah.
I'm willing to pursue it if you want.
I don't understand what you're saying right now. Pursue it in what way? Yeah?
Look, that's cool, bro. We agree on the same definition of empiricism.
Fine. That's good. Let's move on now.
No.
Okay, go on. Say what you want to say. Go on. Okay, I apologize for that. By the
Let's
way.
take Henry VIII for some. No, you know what? Let's go controversial. Okay? Let's take the Holocaust. Yeah? Now, we all know there's a lot of contention around the figures of the amount of people killed. Yeah?
Not really. Not within academic circles.
We'll choose another example if we're not going to agree on that at least. Yeah? Take death toll figures of the Iraq War, for example. Very contested in the last decade. Yeah?
Okay, fine.
Now, according to many different studies, this many people died. According to this many studies, that many people died. According to your definition, all of those statistical studies were empirical. Now, you should know that that's not empirical because there's not one truth. There's not one outcome. Now, empirical evidence as used in science is look at the tree, we're all looking at the same tree, we're all looking at the same grooves. That's the difference. That's what you're talking about. That's sensory. We can all share the same source. Now, if you're talking about
how is that different
which is supposed to be empirical, history which is supposed to be empirical, it's never that because there's always different sources.
You're misinformed.
Are you telling me there's one source?
Do you know why you're Can I tell you why you're misinformed?
You should know that history is built from many different angles.
What's your background? What have you studied?
I've studied a lot.
Tell me what you've studied.
Film.
Okay, so this is not your field, then?
It is my field.
No, I'm sorry, this is not your field, then.
Let me just say something, yeah?
So now it's just going to have to become an educational experience.
You are hurting me a little bit, I feel.
I don't mind that.
You don't know what film consists of. You probably think it's... I've done this many times. People misinterpret what I've studied. Film is very much what we're talking about.
Okay, fine.
It's very much sociological.
Okay, I understand that, man. But these are key terms that you don't understand.
I'm not, like
Look, Darren, I don't want to try and put anything on you, but
empiricism, as I've stated it, is quite easily Googleable. I've never used that word ever, but it's Googleable. Yeah.
Darren, it seems you've got like your defences up a bit.
I feel like you're hot on me, that's why.
Okay, don't feel like that, bro. Don't feel like that.
Biology is very different from
Okay, listen, Darren, before we proceed,
Everyone knows that.
No, what you've said is correct. It's different, the usage is different, but the method is the same. So you're still using your senses to come to conclusions of something.
You're using someone else's senses.
Okay,
What
fine.
senses are you using?
But it's still someone else's fine, no problem.
Yeah, but it's someone else's finding.
Yeah, fine.
That's completely different from empiricism.
No, okay, hold on. Same thing with science.
Bro,
Same thing with science.
Look, if you look at that...
Darren, do you mind calming down for a bit?
Because come on, man, you're not really going by what I'm saying. Right?
Say what you want to say, go on.
If I look at the tree and I tell you, yo, it's a certain way,
Okay.
have you observed the tree? Have you observed the tree?
What, me? What tree are we talking
You're
about?
looking over there, I'm looking at this tree here. I'm a tree scientist.
Okay.
I'm like, yo, see this tree? It's got 8 grooves, it's 8 foot round, and you're not looking, you're just hearing me. Have you seen the tree? Have you observed the tree?
What, you're saying that, yeah?
Have you observed the tree?
What, in that analogy you just gave?
Yes.
I can't see it, no?
You can't see, you're looking at
Oh, yeah, no, so I haven't, no.
Do you have any empirical evidence?
Yeah, your testimony.
No. Yeah, that's cool because I observed it. Okay, fine. In a scientific way, that's cool.
All right.
You take my word for it. We're both fellow scientists.
All right.
In historical circumstances,
It's the same thing, bro.
That's not the same thing.
Of course it's the same thing.
It's not the same thing. It's
Okay,
not,
we'll let the people decide.
Because there's
We'll
always contentious sources.
Okay, fine. Same thing. I think the same thing applies. Look, can I tell you something, right?
No, it's different.
Well, I recommend that you read a book. It's really interesting, very small. It's a good introduction to these things because it will help you understand these themes, and also the people that are watching at home, they can understand these themes. It's a small book written by a guy called Samir Okasha called The Introduction to the Philosophy of Science. Yeah? This book is actually, it talks about empiricism in the first kind of couple of chapters, and it's interesting the way it puts it, yeah? The way the guy puts it is, the way I'm going to put it to you now. The observable reality, for example, like you've got a vase, yeah? The vase, if you have a vase and you drop it, then we can all observe the fact that it will smash on the floor, okay? That's empiricism, isn't it? Yeah? Okay. Would you agree that's empiricism?
Yes.
Would you agree that's scientific?
Yes.
All right. Now, the way you said it is that you were given the example of different sociological outcomes. You're saying, okay, but these people have this death toll and this, right? Listen carefully. So here, what he says is, yeah, we can all see the vase falling onto the floor, but different scientists have had, historically, different explanations of how it falls on the floor. For example, Newtonian physics versus Einsteinian physics. So both of those are two approaches that aim to explain how the vase fell on the floor. Yet, both of them depend upon the same empirical account. The same thing applies in sociology, right? I'm not saying, by the way, that sociology or any of the social sciences have the same merit or the same they're on the same level as the natural side. On the natural side, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, interestingly, and this, I don't want to make this into too much of a philosophical conversation, right? But what I am saying to you is, interestingly, science is premised on the social sciences.
Science is premised on the social sciences.
Yeah. Let me tell you how, yeah? Because natural sciences have methodological presuppositions, like, for example, empiricism, like, for example, logical deductionism, like, for example, the fact that we're sentient, the scientific methodological approach itself. These things are not scientific in their nature. They're actually they are philosophical. They're philosophical precepts. Falsificationism, Karl Popper, who died in 1994. All of those things, and he actually used to lecture in LSE University. All of those things are actually philosophical precepts which underpin the study of science. Do you get me? So from that perspective, you could say the social sciences, in this case philosophy, supersedes or presupposes the natural sciences. So
but it doesn't matter, does it?
No, it does matter. Of course it matters.
Okay, it matters in that way, but the two are qualitatively different.
Okay, so what? Difference doesn't indicate advantage all the time, right? So, for example, if we're saying that,
I'm just trying to say,
yeah. So
if we do agree on the definition of empiricism, and empiricism isn't all these things, which I wouldn't, I don't think many people would agree that history is empirical.
A democratic fallacy.
Even if we did, the qualitative differences between the empiricism required by each is so different. There's no point even using the same word.
No, okay, fine. See that now? I think I'm happy with what you've said there because it seems like you've matured in your approach. To be honest with you, I don't want you to feel like, look, look, whatever you want to call it, bro. I'm here. I'm not trying to be rude to you. Do you get it? I'm just speaking to you. Okay, look, once again, I genuinely do apologize if you take anything rudely. I'm not trying to be rude here. Honestly, I'm not trying to be rude here. Do you accept my apology? Do you accept it? Are you sure? All right. So let me proceed. Yeah. So Now let's understand, look, because these are actually, it's important things that we fleshed out here. We talked about empiricism, we talked about testimony, we talked somewhat about deductionism, and we talked somewhat about like the logical approach, yeah? The important truth here is this, is that when we're coming to truth standards, because if I say, look, for example, I believe that there was an initiator of the universe, and the way I come to that conclusion, and that I believe that there was an initiator of the universe, and that the Quran is the final message sent to all human beings, I'm a Muslim. And you ask me, why did you come to that conclusion? I will say to you in a nutshell, bro, I come to that conclusion for a similar reason why you come to most of your conclusions in life. Like, inference is using evidence to come to conclusion. If you want to Google what inference means, I promise you the Oxford Dictionary is going to describe it in this way.
Yeah.
So my inference to the best explanation as to why we're here and what we're doing here is that, in a nutshell, bro, we're here because there was an initiator, creator, maintainer of the universe, put us into existence, and gave us purpose through both intrinsic methods and extraneous methods. So here, these are the two things I believe. And this conviction I have, let's not call it belief because some people will just jump up and down with the word belief. This conviction I have is premised on the same methods that me and you use in normal everyday life. So, I will say to you, instead of going through the arguments, because everyone here has heard the cosmological argument, okay? You've heard it. You're an educated guy. Do you get me? No, honestly, I do believe you're an educated guy. I'm not just saying that, because the themes... No, I'm telling you, bro. It wasn't to do with what you were saying, because I, from beginning to end, saw you as, okay, this guy's, he's informed, yeah? But it was just about your approach to it. I felt like you had your defenses up a little bit. That's what I meant by matured. Like your emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, but I don't even believe that exists too much. Anyways, having said that, sorry, bro.
Coming over here.
Yeah, of course. All right, so what I was going to say to you was this. Generally speaking, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to tell you the narrative in 20 or 30 seconds and ask you why you don't agree with it, yeah? The Islamic narrative is as follows. I'm not sure what background you come from. You're not Muslim, right? So okay, this will make sense. The Islamic narrative is that the universe came into existence through the will and power of God, of this creator, of this entity, of this initiator, yeah? That always existed. He was the first and will always exist. He is the last, right? He put the universe into existence, he put human beings into the universe, and he ascribed purpose to human being, okay, by giving them a mission in life. That mission is to worship him, to submit to his codes and his will, to his laws, if you will. Just like everything else in life is submitting to his laws. Just like there's laws of physics, if you will. There is natural laws. There are also sociological laws. There are also social laws. Do you get what I'm saying? From that perspective, Darren, we believe that this initiator, this maintainer, this sustainer, we call God colloquially, right? God then gave each of the messengers the same message. These messengers are human beings that were born just like every other human being, except for Jesus and Adam. They were born just like all human beings, and those individuals came to their people, respective peoples and times and places, to tell them to basically worship God and submit to his will and do good to your fellow man. With the exemption of the final messenger, all of the messengers were sent to their respective times, peoples, to preach to their communities. The final messenger, who we believe is Prophet Mohammed, was differentiated in so much as he was sent for all of humankind. Do you get what I mean? Now, this is meant to resonate with you. I mean, frankly, we believe in something called the fitrah. Fitrah is the predisposition. Now, me and you are psychologically, according to Islamic thesis, predisposed to submit to a higher authority anyways, a higher power. And we're meant to recognize this authority intrinsically, axiomatically almost, yeah? So I would say to you, if this doesn't resonate with you, first of all, does this resonate with you? And if it doesn't, what flaws or problems do you see in it such that you're not willing to take that first step in order to potentially be one of those members of people that follow the prophets?
That's a hard question, man.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to answer that. Just don't buy it. That's what it is.
if I say to you, look,
You have to admit, there's a lot at stake here. Yeah?
yeah,
There's a lot at stake. It's literally the reason of existence.
more so from your side than my
I'm gonna
side.
just take a little convenient thing that makes sense to me. It takes far more than that to prove life and existence. And I feel like it ain't enough. I don't buy it.
Okay, you don't buy it, but if you say that you don't buy it, now you have to justify it epistemically. Because I'm saying that, you don't have to justify anything.
Obligation.
Yeah, no, of course not, of course not. You know, I don't mean it like that. I meant you have to justify it epistemically. So what I meant, so we said already, we discussed like standards of truth. It seems like what you are saying is that in terms of standards of truth,
There's not much at stake, so I'm not going to bother. When you ask me, why do you exist? Why does everything ever in existence exist? You know, it's gonna be deep. Like,
Okay.
the process at which you become convinced.
I was going to say to you
So
this.
and that's not enough to convince.
Do you know-
Telling me what's wrong with it?
It's not enough to convince you. Okay. What?
I mean, let's take a
Yeah, go on.
contentious historical issue, something that you might have looked at.
Go on.
You must apply your best standards of
guys.
skepticism.
Fuck her right in the pussy.
Bro, see what I'm saying? That's dead, man. You lot better edit that out.
Yeah, the guy's.
So basically, yeah.
He must be high or something. Huh?
You know what?
You,
that was on live. I think people will see good. He's just made himself.
Go on.
I can't remember what was I saying.
I don't know, bro. Oh, you were saying take a historical
Yeah, so imagine you've looked at something in history
Yeah.
and it's quite contentious, but you really want to figure it out. You want to come to a conclusion. So you apply quite high standards for the way that you go about this. You have rigorous and informed skepticism to come to the conclusion about
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Now, I feel that a lot of people would apply more rigorous skepticism and requirements for things like this than they would on the greatest answer of all. I feel like taking it a bit easy.
All right, fair enough. Let me ask you a question. Do you know what you said about you being one son, yeah? Let's take that as an example. It's interesting. You know the Quran says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created from nothing, or were they themselves the creators of themselves? Chapter 52, verse 35, yeah? It's quite an interesting thing to think about. If you think about not only your own existence, but the existence of the universe in general, right? أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ. Were they created from nothing? Because you've got to think about all of the alternatives here, theological alternatives, yeah? If we say that, okay, this thing called God doesn't exist and we're all just here as a matter of, not even a random generation, we came from nothing.
I never said that.
I'm not saying you did say
Okay,
that,
cool.
by the way, sorry sir. By the way, I never said that you said that. And let me make that clear, right? You never said that. The question is, what options do you really have, right? Because so the Quran says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. Were they created from nothing? So your first option is that the universe or you came into existence generally from nothing.
Yes.
أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Did you create yourself? You know that that can't be the case because it would assume existence and non-existence at the same time. The same thing applies for the universe, right? أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Did you go and create the universe? Obviously you didn't, right? Could you say that something in the universe created the universe? You can't say that, right? So, بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. The only thing I can think of that an atheist will say is that the universe was always there. In which case we can have a discussion about contingency, or they can say there were multiple universes. But then again, there will be an infinite amount of universes, all of which would regressively go backward, which would mean you'd have one universe that would have to start everything up. The question is, how do you explain existence when all of the atheistic models seem to be completely out of line with that which is your approach? Which is really a testimonial approach, a logical approach, an empirical approach. It's all of those things are out the window with atheism. Yeah, there's actually no deductionism, no inductionism, no empiricism, no inference that you can make that will make atheism a tenable option for a rational actor.
I agree.
Yeah, from that perspective, you're actually forced, in a sense, compelled to steer towards the theistic alternative. And if you are forced towards a theistic alternative, the question is, when you realize that God does exist and the universe is in existence and we are in the universe as actors, rational actors, what are we doing here and why are we here? And the question is, what narrative, what meta-narrative better explains our existence than the one I gave you aforehand?
None.
So why don't you just accept it?
This is what it's really about. You gave me a list of conditions in the Quran, all these possible ways that we might exist. Are you limited to those
What do you mean?
as options?
The ones I gave you, I think we're limited to them, yes.
I don't.
So give me something else.
We don't know.
No, hold on.
Considered that?
I've just said to you that the only options for the creation of the universe.
That's another condition.
What?
We don't. I mean, surely you're aware of the fact that there's certain things that we don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Can you tell me what was happening 900 AD in Botswana? Probably not. Do you know why? Because there's not much history in that part of the world.
There is. AD, yeah, of course there is. Botswana.
Okay, maybe that's a bad example.
Yeah, it's very bad.
I'd put money on it, to be
What,
fair.
Botswana in Africa?
Okay, tell me what was happening in the region.
Where's Botswana?
Hold on.
Where's Botswana? I don't want to get this wrong. Sorry.
What was happening in the Alaska region of the North
I
American
don't know, man.
continent?
I don't even know what's going on now. That's right there.
Neither do I. But the point is that there's a lot in history that we just don't know.
Of course, man. I'm not going to deny that.
That has survived into the present, etc. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I am very content with the fact that I don't know everything. Some people seem to have a weird insecurity and a need for. Oh, sorry, my bad. Some people don't. Some people I feel are very insecure with this fact. I feel some people are very insecure with this fact, and their coping mechanism is to often, sometimes use much.
I want to take this. That's it. I'm done. You can take the rest.
Okay, inshallah.
People will sometimes use logic and ration to try to come to the most amenable or convenient way of explaining things. Now the truth is, bro, them man are all being impatient in my opinion. There's things that you will never know.
Yeah, true. Same. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah? And there's things I'll never know, and I'm cool with that. And I personally believe that the biggest question of all is certainly not the one we know. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
It seems like that's a cop-out, though, to be honest with you. Like,
no. Well, hold that thought. We can talk about
from
that.
the discussion.
I'm saying, bro, if man don't even know like the state of political affairs in the northwest region of Mongolia 1,000 years ago, if you can't tell me something that specific,
1,000 years ago.
within reach, then how do you expect to tell me how we came into existence? Scientists certainly can't.
You had a big empire at that time. You had the starts of the Mongolian Empire.
That's not, the point is that there's a lot we don't know, and I believe that this is certain.
No, I'm not saying you're right.
Tell me
You're
why
wrong.
it's a cop-out.
I believe it's a cop-out because look, you're right that I'm not making the argument that we know everything. That's not what you're doing now is called a straw man. A straw man fallacy, right? Because what I've not, yeah, it is, of course. Because I've not made the argument that you've got two presuppositions, right? One of your presuppositions is that you need to know all knowledge in order to come to conclusions about our beginnings.
I don't know if that is a presupposition.
Of course it is.
No, because you might have misunderstood me. Okay. I'm not saying we will know once we know everything.
Okay, so what you're saying?
Certain things we won't know.
Okay, so what?
Agreed?
What's that got to do with anything?
That's the point.
But what's that got to do with the beginning of the universe and how over
If you
here?
don't see it, then let me clarify.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there's some things we'll never know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I do with that.
I never said that. Oh, once we know everything, then we'll know it. That would conclude that I believe everything is knowable. Which I never claimed.
So what's that got to do with the discussion of our beginnings and why we're here?
I believe that it might be one of those things that we'll never know.
How can you prove that?
I don't need to prove that.
Okay, so how is this relevant to our discussion?
I think that's entirely relevant.
Okay.
What's your name again?
Mohammed, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's entirely relevant, Mohammed.
So you're saying this? Okay, look. The thing is, look, hold on. If you wouldn't accept this for, let me give you an easy example, right? Because it seems like, once again, and this is why I end up having to accuse, I'm not saying you're an atheist or whatever, your background is whatever your background is, but people with your kind of arguments, I accuse them of always having different standards of truth. So when it comes to all the other sciences in life, they have certain standards which are very clearly defined: testimony, empiricism, deductionism, inductionism, abductionism, whatever you want to call it, probabilistic reasoning. All of these things are all employable in all sciences, but when it comes to theology, they're thrown out. Now, what I'm saying is this: when we are saying, you're saying, oh, you might not know it, which is very much agnostic kind of approach, yeah? What I'm saying is this: if you went to court and someone done really something bad to, let's say, a child or something, I'm not saying that happened, someone is raped a child and there was like 10 cameras on them, and you had to, in order to come to a conclusion on, you have to kind of review the evidence. You review the evidence, and then and the judge comes out and says, you know what? After reviewing the evidences, we know we have some information, but we don't have all the information. Therefore, we can't really take this person and punish that person. Do you know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be something you would accept. So once again, your standard of truth, if you were to really employ it where it counts for you emotionally and psychologically and in your life, you wouldn't allow, you would call it injustice, right? So in the same way, I say to you, look, if your standards of truth are such that you've just mentioned, the ones that you just mentioned, or we just gone through, and I've given you this kind of outline which fits that standard of truth, why not accept the standard of truth?
No, because I think, once again, you've misunderstood it, because take the court analogy. There may have been a way of finding out about all the facts and therefore coming to a conclusion about what actually happened. I'm saying that this is not the case. There's many things that we won't know. They cannot be known within our scope, at least.
Okay, so
that's what I believe. I
okay,
mean,
I
don't
agree.
believe I have to verify that, bro. I think. Okay. I mean, because you've agreed that there's some things that we'll never know.
Yeah, I don't see what.
So when I say, oh well, this is one of the things that I believe we'll never know, you suddenly have a problem, even though you
no, but you have no reason to.
That we never know.
You have no reason to. That's the point. So an agnost will say, we can never know, or we can say, I will never know in the first person. I will never know what happened, right? And I will say, do you know that you will never know?
I don't see how it's relevant.
No, it's very relevant, bro.
Tell me why it's relevant to know that you know.
Just answer this question first, and I'll tell you why it's relevant afterwards. I'm asking you, do you know that you'll never know?
No.
How do you? Okay, so why make the point? Why make the point?
Because I'm applying the same principle to that.
No, but look, if you want to apply the principle,
I might not ever know if I know, bro. Come on, man.
No, hold on. Don't listen carefully, right? If your belief is that okay, this whole thing is that you never know, right? And now, obviously, you're a result of your experience and your knowledge that you've acquired in, let's say, 28 years. I'm guessing you're 28 years old.
That's good.
Am I right?
Exactly. You said I was in my 30s earlier, though. So
no, I said maybe.
You redeemed yourself there.
Okay. And I like your jacket. Where'd you get that jacket from, by the way?
ASOS.
It's nice, man. I like the long ones, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, what I was going to say to you was, you don't know that you'll never know. Do you get it?
I'd say that, yeah.
Yeah, so from that perspective, you can't make that argument because that argument is contingent. Yeah, that argument is contingent on your current state of affairs.
Your necessity.
What do you
may require, personally, a need to know that you know. I personally don't work like that. I don't qualify my beliefs like that. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just saying that. You said we don't know, yeah?
Yes, but
and you say with this theological thing, which is the universe coming into existence and us having a purpose here, yeah? That we will never know, yeah?
I never said that.
Okay, that we would. Okay, so what?
A level of certainty there.
Okay, so what is it?
We'll never know.
So what do you think?
I said it may be one of those things we'll never know.
Okay.
Because right now, I believe we don't know.
Okay, if we don't know.
Damn right.
Well, you should say I don't know.
Nah, bro. I say we don't.
Okay, fine. So
100%.
So what you're doing is you're generalizing
human knowledge and see large gaps.
So how do you know that I don't know? Because you said we, so we is a collective pronoun.
Call it a belief then if you want.
No, it's a collective pronoun.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Call it a belief if you like, but I believe that we don't know.
You don't know.
I believe that we don't know.
Okay. Anyways, look, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I like you, man. Seriously.
Bro,
listen, I apologize if I come across in any...
Yeah, you did a little bit.
Yeah?
You did a little bit.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning, man. I like you, man. We'll get some food after something, yeah? You tell me where you get the jacket.
Let me just say, he didn't pursue it to the end.
Okay, what do you want to say to me?
No, it's cool.
If you want to say anything
as well, it's late.
Yeah, well, if you want to say anything to me, I don't mind.
Next
answering.
time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. I'll give you my number if you want to chat to you. Yeah, guys. Make sure you subscribe to all these respective channels, except for content over everything. No. Except for because they already subscribed, bro. I'm joking. Of course not.
Best one, the one in your hand, yeah? The best one is that one there.
Yo, do you know the
So you're gonna jet now, or?
Yeah.